Welcome back to Exploring the Roots of Energy, the podcast where we break down complex ideas around health, metabolism, and energy production, so you can actually apply them to your life. In this episode, we're diving into Generative Energy Podcast number 1 with Danny Roddy and Georgi Dinkov. If you've ever listened to their conversations, you know they're packed with dense, high-level discussions about the bioenergetic perspective. This episode is meant to serve as a companion piece, breaking things down, summarizing key points, and making them more digestible. We'll be covering a range of critical topics, from the misleading propaganda around omega-3s to how serotonin is actually linked to aggression and criminal behavior. We'll also get into the powerful effects of Allopregnanolone and 5-alpha reductase, the surprising metabolic benefits of vitamin B1, and whether Methylene Blue is the underrated energy booster everyone should know about. This isn't a replacement for the original podcast. It's a way to help you understand and absorb the key concepts even better. If you want the full deep dive, I highly recommend checking out the original episode with Danny and Georgi. Now, let's get into it. All right, let's start with omega-3s, one of the most heavily marketed so-called superfoods of the last few decades. If you've ever been told that loading up on fish oil is great for your heart, brain, and overall health, you're not alone. The problem? That entire narrative is built on shaky science, industry lobbying, and corporate interests looking to offload a waste product. Danny and Georgi break this down in the Generative Energy Podcast, highlighting how omega-3s, especially EPA and DHA, aren't the miracle nutrients they're made out to be. In reality, these highly unsaturated fats are extremely prone to oxidation, meaning they break down into harmful byproducts like lipid peroxides and acrolein, both of which contribute to inflammation, aging, and even cancer. In fact, Georgi mentions that omega-3s were originally a waste product of the fishing industry. Companies had to figure out what to do with this surplus of fish oil, and rather than throwing it away, they pivoted to marketing it as a health supplement. With the help of some well-placed funding in research and nutritional guidelines, omega-3s quickly became a household staple. Even mainstream medicine has quietly started backtracking on this. Georgi points out that doctors now caution against consuming too much fish due to its pro-oxidative effects, particularly when it comes to cardiovascular health. But for some reason, the same skepticism isn't applied to omega-6s, despite the overwhelming evidence that they're just as harmful, if not worse. So what's the takeaway? The idea that more omega-3 is always better is just another case of industry-driven nutrition advice that doesn't hold up under scrutiny. Instead of blindly supplementing with fish oil, it's better to focus on saturated fats, which are much more stable and protective against oxidative stress. Next up, we're diving into a controversial topic: serotonin's connection to aggression, and criminal behavior. Serotonin is often painted as the feel-good neurotransmitter, the thing that keeps you happy and calm. But what if that entire idea is a massive oversimplification? What if, instead of making people happier, excess serotonin actually contributes to aggression, impulsivity, and even criminal behavior? In Generative Energy Podcast number 1, Danny and Georgi break down the dark side of serotonin, something that mainstream medicine rarely acknowledges. While serotonin can have calming effects in certain contexts, its chronic elevation has been linked to lower brain energy, emotional blunting, and increased aggression. One of the key studies Georgi mentions showed that when ATP levels in the brain drop, people become more irritable, risk-averse, and in extreme cases, outright violent. And guess what? Serotonin has been shown to lower ATP production in the brain. So, instead of making you feel good, excess serotonin can actually leave you in a low-energy, hyper-reactive state where the smallest stressor can set you off. This explains why SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which artificially increase serotonin, have been linked to violent outbursts, suicidal tendencies, and personality changes. In fact, there was a successful legal case where a defense team argued that an SSRI had turned someone into a completely different person, one who was capable of committing violent crimes they otherwise wouldn't have. Another study Georgi references describes serotonin as a drive to withdraw neurotransmitter, meaning that when serotonin is high, people become passive, disengaged, and unmotivated to take risks. In other words, too much serotonin doesn't just make people aggressive, it also makes them apathetic and indifferent, which could explain a lot about modern society's increasing passivity. So what's the takeaway? The idea that serotonin is purely a happiness molecule is misleading. Instead, it's a stress-adaptive neurotransmitter that, when chronically elevated, can lead to emotional suppression, aggression, and a diminished ability to engage with the world in a meaningful way. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Allopregnanolone, one of the body's most powerful anti-stress neurosteroids, and why 5-alpha reductase is so crucial for mental health. Now that we've broken down the misconceptions about serotonin, let's talk about one of the body's most powerful anti-stress compounds, Allopregnanolone. If you've never heard of it, Allopregnanolone is a neurosteroid derived from progesterone, and it plays a crucial role in keeping the brain and nervous system balanced. It's one of the strongest natural GABA agonists, meaning it calms the nervous system, promotes deep sleep, and acts as a buffer against stress. And here's the kicker. Without enough allopregnanolone, the brain becomes way more sensitive to stress, anxiety, and even aggression. It's no surprise that low allopregnanolone levels have been linked to depression, postpartum mood disorders, and even neurodegenerative diseases. Now, here's where 5-alpha reductase comes in. This enzyme is essential for converting progesterone into allopregnanolone and testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, DHT, a hormone that plays a key role in male health. But here's the problem. Modern medicine demonizes 5-alpha reductase because of its connection to DHT. And that's why finasteride, a drug that inhibits 5-alpha reductase, exists. Georgi and Danny discuss how blocking 5-alpha reductase with drugs like finasteride, commonly used for hair loss and prostate issues, has serious consequences. These drugs don't just lower DHT, they also interfere with allopregnanolone production, leading to brain fog, depression, and sexual dysfunction. Symptoms commonly known as post-finasteride syndrome. The takeaway here is simple. Allopregnanolone is one of the most protective substances in the brain. 5-alpha reductase is essential for producing it. Blocking 5-alpha reductase with pharmaceuticals can lead to long-term neurological and hormonal imbalances. So, if you're dealing with anxiety, stress sensitivity, or even cognitive issues, supporting progesterone and allopregnanolone production might be key. And that means avoiding things that inhibit 5-alpha reductase, whether that's pharmaceuticals like finasteride or excessive amounts of environmental estrogenic compounds. Next up, let's talk about one of the most interesting compounds discussed in this episode, methylene blue. What is it? How does it work? And is there any downside to using it? Now let's talk about methylene blue, a compound that has gained a lot of attention in bioenergetic circles, and for good reason. Georgi and Danny dive deep into this topic in the podcast, breaking down both its powerful metabolic benefits and potential risks at higher doses. So what exactly is methylene blue? It's a quinone-like molecule that has been used for over a century in medicine, originally as a treatment for malaria. But over time, researchers found that it has remarkable properties when it comes to cellular energy production. Here's why it's important. Methylene blue acts as an electron carrier in the mitochondria, helping to improve the efficiency of ATP production, the fuel that keeps our cells running. It also helps to neutralize nitric oxide, which, when elevated, can block mitochondrial respiration and contribute to fatigue, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction. Lastly, it has a strong anti-stress and neuroprotective effect, making it an interesting compound for mental clarity, mood support, and even cognitive enhancement. That all sounds great, right? But like anything, dose matters. Georgi and Danny discuss how at lower doses, methylene blue is an effective metabolic booster, helping reduce oxidative stress, increase cellular energy, and even protect against neurodegeneration. However, higher doses can be problematic because methylene blue also inhibits monoamine oxidase, MAOA, an enzyme responsible for breaking down serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters. Why does that matter? If you take too much methylene blue, especially if you're on SSRIs or other serotonin-boosting drugs, it can potentially lead to serotonin syndrome, which is a dangerous buildup of serotonin in the brain. So, What's the takeaway? Methylene Blue can be a powerful tool for enhancing metabolism and protecting against stress. But dosage is key. Too much can interfere with neurotransmitter balance and create unintended issues. If you're taking SSRIs or other MAO inhibitors, Methylene Blue is something you should be very cautious about. It's another great example of how context matters when using metabolic enhancers. Now, moving on, let's discuss progesterone's role in regulating the female cycle and how it can help when ovulation occurs sooner than expected. Now, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked in mainstream health discussions: how progesterone plays a key role in regulating the female cycle, particularly in cases where ovulation happens earlier than expected. In the podcast, Danny and Georgi highlight that a shortened follicular phase, meaning ovulation occurs too soon, can often be a sign of low progesterone levels. Why is this important? Because progesterone is the key hormone that helps maintain cycle stability, promotes proper ovulation timing, and counterbalances estrogen. Here's what happens when progesterone is low. The follicular phase shortens, meaning ovulation happens too early. Estrogen dominance can occur, leading to heavy periods, PMS, mood swings, and even fertility issues. Increased prolactin levels, which can interfere with normal ovulation and hormone balance. Higher stress responses, since progesterone has natural anti-stress properties similar to GABA, helping to calm the nervous system. So, how does progesterone supplementation help? It supports the natural rhythm of the menstrual cycle, preventing ovulation from happening too soon. It counteracts excess estrogen and prolactin, helping with mood stability and reducing PMS symptoms. It has a calming, anti-stress effect, helping with better sleep and overall metabolic function. How much progesterone should someone take? Georgi mentions that a general physiological dose is between 20 to 30 milligrams per day, depending on the person's needs. However, going too high, over 100 milligrams daily, can sometimes cause heavier bleeding issues in some women, so finding the right balance is key. A good approach is to 1. Start with a low dose and track how it affects your cycle. 2. Pair it with temperature and pulse tracking to assess metabolic and thyroid function. 3. Test for prolactin levels. High prolactin can interfere with progesterone's benefits, so it's important to keep it in check. At the end of the day, progesterone is one of the most protective and balancing hormones for women. But as always, the right dosage and personal context matter. Now, let's dive into another powerful yet underrated vitamin, B1, and why it's a critical energy-producing nutrient that also acts as a performance enhancer. Next up, let's talk about vitamin B1, also known as thiamine. One of the most critical yet overlooked nutrients when it comes to energy production, metabolism, and even athletic performance. In the podcast, Georgi and Danny discuss how vitamin B1 plays a crucial role in cellular energy production by supporting the enzyme pyruvate dehydrogenase, PDH, a key enzyme that helps convert glucose into usable energy, ATP. Why does this matter? Because without enough B1, the body struggles to efficiently use carbohydrates for energy, leading to fatigue and brain fog, muscle weakness and sluggish metabolism, elevated lactic acid levels, which can contribute to metabolic stress and poor endurance. Now, here's where it gets interesting. B1 isn't just important for basic energy production. It's actually been used as a performance enhancer. Research has shown that high-dose vitamin B1 can reduce lactic acid buildup, which helps muscular endurance and recovery, support brain function, improving mental clarity and reaction time, enhance metabolic flexibility, allowing the body to efficiently switch between energy sources. In fact, some Japanese companies have even developed synthetic forms of B1 that are so effective in boosting metabolism and performance that they are now banned in professional sports. How much B1 do you need? A general daily dose of 100 milligrams is a good starting point for most people. Those with digestive issues, inflammation, or low energy may benefit from higher doses, 300 to 600 milligrams per day. In extreme cases, like severe fatigue, brain fog, or chronic illness, doses up to 1,500 milligrams have been shown to be beneficial. But here's something most people don't know. Many athletes, high performers, and even people on low-carb diets can actually become deficient in B1 without realizing it. That's because low-carb diets reduce insulin, which can lower B1 absorption. Chronic stress and high cortisol levels burn through B1 faster. Alcohol consumption depletes B1 rapidly, leading to symptoms like brain fog and sluggish metabolism. So, whether you're looking to boost energy, enhance metabolism, or simply improve mental clarity, B1 is one of those vitamins that makes a real difference. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Exploring the Roots of Energy. We covered a lot of ground today, diving deep into the insights from Generative Energy Podcast number 1 with Danny Roddy and Georgi Dinkov. We explored the propaganda behind omega-3s, the link between serotonin and aggression, and why Allopregnanolone is such a critical neurosteroid. We also broke down the potential benefits and risks of methylene blue, how progesterone can help regulate ovulation, and why vitamin B1 might be one of the most underrated nutrients for energy production and performance. Ultimately, this discussion highlights a central theme. Our health is deeply connected to energy metabolism. When we optimize ATP production, mitochondrial function, and hormonal balance, we're not just improving individual symptoms, we're building resilience, improving performance, and supporting longevity. Now, if you found today's breakdown helpful, make sure to check out the full original podcast from Danny Roddy and Georgi Dinkov. This episode is just a supplemental overview to help make these complex ideas more accessible. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with others who might find it useful. Also, let me know in the comments, which of today's topics intrigued you the most? Do you have any questions or personal experiences with things like omega-3s, serotonin, or methylene blue? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to dive even deeper into bioenergetics, metabolism, and the science behind energy production, stay tuned. More episodes are on the way. As always, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.